everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Goalie Smith TV. Our guest today has been in the news a lot lately. He was a 4-year starter at Delaware, an All-American. He is 6'6", a massive goalie. Matt DeLuca. Matt, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? How are you doing? Just pumped to be a part of it. Can't wait.
Awesome. So, Matt, the first time we met you in person was last August. Mike and I were in town. Kyle Harrison came out to shoot on you. You came down from Delaware. We had a blast. But I want to backtrack because I don't think you know this, but the first time that I had actually heard of your name, your teammate Parker Farragon, who had transferred from Syracuse, went to Delaware, great guy who we love and lives in South Carolina now, had said to me, look out for this kid, Matt DeLuca. He is the best goalie I've ever seen. And that takes a lot from somebody who you play against and compete with. But I want to backtrack. Talk us through how you went from Farmingdale in Long Island, New York to Delaware and how you decided to go there.
So Parker's a great guy. I mean, that could have been the best senior goalie to have on a team when you're a freshman trying to make a name for yourself, trying to play. Like he was just so motivational, just always had my back no matter what. And I couldn't thank Parker enough for being just so supportive as a senior. But to backtrack how I got to Delaware and to where I am today, freshman year, sophomore year of high school, didn't really hit that growth spurt at all, or just like an athletic kind of growth spurt. So I wasn't on varsity my freshman year, played JV, which was definitely a humbling experience. All my best friends were on varsity and I got left behind. Sophomore year, I got pulled up, started like the fourth game in, and then that's where I started getting recruited a little bit, not much at all. I was still young, still under 6 foot. I did not grow yet at that point. And then kind of the end of that year is when I hit my growth spurt, kind of found my body, I like to say, is where I was able to start doing some more athletic things outside of the goal. Up until that point, I was pretty unathletic, just a weird, lanky kind of height. But that summer going into junior year, I played hotbeds, and that's where Coach Shilling Long, Coach Collins, the old coach of the Delaware, ended up recruiting me. I played in the All-Star game. Other goalie didn't show up, so I got 60 minutes to just ball out in front of all these college coaches at hotbeds tournament, which was just destiny, I guess, at that point where Coach Shill saw me, got recruited then, and I committed right away. It was the first big school that kind of looked at me, and I just kind of took my opportunity and ran with it. Moving on to junior year is when I kind of hit my stride. I went from 5'11" to 6'4" in one summer, one school year kind of. Gained some weight, gained some athleticism and stuff like that, and became a high school All-American my junior year. And that's kind of where my lacrosse career took off. And that's kind of how I credit where I got today and stuff. That's where I opened back up my recruiting, played my senior year, and then kind of decided, Shills was the first guy to look into me. He was the guy that gave me a chance. I can't go anywhere else. Like I owe my debt to play college lacrosse under him. And I mean, it's hard to say no to Delaware. This campus was amazing. Academics are good. Lacrosse team's right there in the hotbed area. I mean, it was just too hard to say no. And that's kind of how I ended up here. It was a rocky process, starting out slow. I was one of the first recruits, but then, I kind of ended up on a bigger stage and I still knew this was the place for me.
Matt, I want to jump back into the coaching topic. I know you had throughout your career in Delaware a very strong relationship with Coach Noah Foster, your goalie coach. Andrew and I both like him, are very fond of him, respect the hell out of him as a coach and a player. Noah and I actually played back when we were juniors in high school at the Blue Chip camp, which was the elite. They only took 6 goalies in the country. I got to know him really well. It was exciting. Anyways, back to it. I want you if you could elaborate on what your relationship is like with him, especially like your senior year, and Coach Selva too, Coach Chris Selva. I want you to just tell us, why was it such a successful relationship? What does it look like when a top-performing goalie has a good relationship with his coach? How's the trust? Just kind of jump into that for us.
Yeah, for sure. I'll start with Coach Selva because he kind of got my foot in the door when I first got here. Started working with him, got rid of some bad high school habits that, it just came with coming from high school. But we had a great relationship. And I think what was key for both was that I play a totally different style than each of those coaches. Those guys are smaller guys. a very active style goalie in net, love to come out and do all that stuff. And I think what was realized early in both relationships was just that, like, they can't teach me really how they played because I just play such a different style, and it's just really not going to work out. And Coach Selva did a great job. I mean, as a freshman, helped me break out some of my high school habits, but still let me do a majority of what I felt comfortable doing in cage. And I think that gave me a lot of confidence my freshman year to lean back on some of the stuff that I've built out through my whole lacrosse career. Was just, I'm not really getting told word for word how to play goalie. It's not like you need to be here, do this, do that, do that. It's kind of like, here's your basis. Now go out and just ball and just play lacrosse like you know how. And that was perfect, a perfect build-up to going into my relation with Coach Foz, which is just an unbelievable relationship I have with Coach Foz. I mean, he's like my best friend, best mentor, everything. He's just like, he just hits all those checkpoints for me. And as a developing goalie and still growing, I mean, he's the best. And what I loved about our relationship was just how we came to practice every day with just questions for each other and things to try out, which, like, I had the most fun with during my career here with him, because every day I knew when we were warming up together, we were bringing information that other goalies are doing or what other goalies are trying, and we're developing my style to be like just a mesh of all these different styles. Like, I took a lot of from Coach Foz, what he did in tight and how he had that spring in his step and just kind of went straight up the pipe indoors, where normally I would just sit there in my stay patient, do what I know best and just use my size. But I took a little more of that active step from him. But then also looking at guys like Jack and Cannon, like you talked about in the PLL, and Dylan Ward, who I watched a lot of film on just because we have a similar size. And it's just someone who's successful like that, there's definitely some takeaways that I can use growing my game right now. And that's what me and Coach Foz did every time we watched film, went out to warm-ups. It wasn't really that it was a player-coach relationship, but at the same time, it was like, hey, like, we know what we got in you. Like, let's just develop you every day. Let's take in parts from everywhere else, and let's make you just one mesh of a goalkeeper.
Man, I love
so, I mean, that's awesome. That must have been exciting and refreshing on a daily basis. Like, sometimes when you just hit the same drills over and over again, it just gets heavy, and you never want to get there in the goal where it feels like it's heavy to play. One last question about you, and this could be with Coach Selva or Coach Foss. Do you have an example of a situation during a game when things weren't going your way and how you adjusted with the help of your coach, or maybe they just gave you a lot of rope? But what does it look like when you're not having a great game and you have an interaction with your coach? How do you make those changes? What kind of conversation happens? How much rope does he give you? How much trust do you have in him? That sort of thing, in order to get back out there and rewrite the ship.
I would say I had a lot of rope, but I also think that rope comes with all the hard work that you prove yourself with. So I would say I had a little more rope than most goalies might have had. But those games that I struggle, man, they're a humbling experience, because you never know when they're going to happen, and when they do happen, it's hard to come out of. And I think having a strong relationship with your goalie coach and head coach is very important. So just for example, those games I was struggling in, really wasn't seeing the ball well. Those conversations we were having is just take that deep breath and let's try to pinpoint why it's not going your way, when last week or whatever throughout the season you're you're having so much success. And at the end of the day, there was never any negative body language or negative comments from the coaching staff, which is just huge. And that's what you look for, even if it's the small ones under their breath, or, oh, you should have had that one in a game moment. I never felt that from Coach Fosner or Coach DeLuca or Coach Selva early on. It's more of, hey, let that one go in and let's see what we could do on the next one. And a prime example is this year. I probably had the worst game of my career against Villanova. It was a very unfortunate game. I was sick the week prior with a stomach bug. I lost 10, almost 15 pounds. Still couldn't consume any food with holding it in, so had no energy. And I went out there and tried to play, and it did not work out well. And, I mean, I let up 9-10 goals without making a save, and I was still in there because of the confidence they had in me and just kind of that conversation we were having. Eventually I got pulled, but I got put back in at halftime, made some saves coming out of half. And it's just they just keep you so, like the relationship with the coaches just keep you so positive. And it's hard to fall down on yourself when people are still encouraging you. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think, my big two takeaways from this episode of this Goalsmith TV, two things that you've addressed so far that are massive. And I think there's a lot that goalies can learn from this, but there's 2 points that you've made that I think coaches can take away from this one. And the first one is having trust and giving trust and proving that you trust your goalie. When goalies feel that, they play at their best. When they feel that at any given second they're going to get pulled or they're playing scared, that's when goalies start to fall apart. But when they have the full trust of their coaching staff that, through thick and thin, and obviously if they're playing poorly consistently, that's a different story, but they know that going into a game they have the trust. That's so crucial for a goalie to perform at an optimal level. The second thing is not trying to make every goalie into one style. A lot of the reason why we started Goaliesmith, and just from our perspective, from what we've seen and been coached in the past, is very a monkey see, monkey do attitude that coaches bring to the goalie position because there's so much unknown and so much that's been regurgitated from years past. Whereas the right thing to do is to take a look at each individual goalie. And while there should be similarities in the way they play for certain things, you really have to tailor the position to the goalie. When you take away a goalie's strengths when they get to the next level or at their college or professional level and you try to change them into some sort of mold, you're wasting time and you're going to lose what makes them great. And most likely it doesn't pan out because you're forcing them into something that's uncomfortable. While we should all make changes in our game, it's important that coaches adapt to the style of goalie. So I'm glad that you made that point. Let's pivot a little bit. Let's jump into what your life is now. You were one of the first ones to decide not to return to college for that extra granted year. Walk us through what went into that decision and why you did it.
Yeah, sure. So, when we found out our season was over, a lot of us didn't really think that we'd get it back. We thought it would be a stretch for the NCAA. I still believe it is, but they made it happen. So that's when once it ended is when my mind started thinking like, what's next for me and all this stuff. And I do have a job lined up with through an alumni. So that was kind of a safety point for me was, hey, it doesn't matter what happens out of this. Like, at least I got a fallback option. So that was one of the safety nets I had. But from a lacrosse standpoint, I looked at it as, could I go out there every day and give it all I had one full more year after knowing what I just put in this fall to have it cut short like that. And, I not that I have questions with my body, but I had 2 hip surgeries prior to, so another fall is another year of wear and tear on my body, which can do some damage. I'm not happy with my hips, but they do feel great now. And I just don't want to mess that feeling up that I have. I finally have the freedom to go on a run on my own, which I was never able to do up until this year. I can start doing some weightlifting with my legs, which I really haven't had a lot of success with, just strictly because of hip pain and all that stuff. But I'm finally feeling so good at a point in my life that I was like, hey, I think this is when I can take my game to the next level. I'm in good enough shape. I'm coming off a good year and stuff like that. It was the hardest decision I ever made. It took me weeks to make that decision. And I think the biggest thing was just like, man, like there's nothing like college lacrosse. And that was really hard to walk away from. But at the same time, in my gut, I know I did what's best for me. It's not easy playing on a roster with 2 active goalies. Like, we see a lot of rubber every day and all that stuff. And that was improving. And Coach DeLuca and Coach Fosner, man, the 2 hardest coaches to ever say like, yeah, I don't think I can come back. But ultimately it was a decision I felt was best for me. Knowing that I think to this point I was confident that I've gotten my game to a level. And at the same time, like doing college for 4 years, like I was ready for something new. Like I'm ready to spice up my life and just say like, let's get after it with the best in the world. And just kind of that excitement that brings, like I was just ready for that. And that's kind of what took me over the edge, was just like, hey, like I think I could do this. It's a kid's dream. You spend 18 years playing a sport and you have the opportunity to go professional in that sport. Like, it's goosebumps right there instantly. And I think that's what threw me over the edge was, hey, I worked so hard, got myself to this point with all these opportunities. Like, if I say no, like, will I regret this in a year? And that's what I couldn't get over, was that feeling of regret I could have if I decided to go back to pass up some of these opportunities.
So let's jump more into that. You are in a unique position right now. You are one of the first ever goalies, highly touted, coming out of college, who's going to go play in the PLL, which is picking up a lot of steam. Maybe Troutner and Kincannon before you in year one, but now they've got, they got some steam. There's a little bit more buzz amongst the players, and it seems like just like pro lacrosse is becoming more attractive as the years go on. So my question to you is, what's it like to be this guy who's highly touted, highly anticipated coming out of college, because not a lot of goalies have been there before. How's it feel? What are you excited about? What are you nervous about? Dive in.
Yeah, I would definitely. I'll start with the exciting part. Is just like it's a feeling that I've never really had all this attention, and like you guys know, some of the hype that's like around my name now, like I never really got going to Delaware and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's an exciting feeling. It's a little bit of nerve-wracking, but I think my biggest pull away from all of this is the humbling experience that I've had at Delaware. Like I try to go out every day and do all these big things and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, there's people getting way more attention, way more all of that. So it's kind of just like I've always just had, just stayed in the gutters, as Coach DeLuca loved to say. Like we were never, you're like never be more arrogant than you are confident and stuff like that. So it's always just, it's weird now, I think, to me, is honestly to get as much as attention that I've gotten in these past couple weeks, because I'm not used to it. And honestly, I don't think it changes much for me, because at the end of the day, I had to get myself out of high school into a college roster, and now I have to get myself out of college to a pro roster. And by doing that, it's going to be the same process. Keep your head in the gutter, just work hard. And when your opportunity comes about, I mean, you have to take it 110% and give it all you got. And I feel like what I've done to this point is going to really prepare me for that well.
Great. Well, let's jump into our final question, do a little bonus round. Have you ever seen the pictures where they take the best parts of like, let's say an NFL quarterback and make like the perfect quarterback? You ever seen those before?
Yeah, I've definitely seen those before. They're actually really cool.
All right, cool. So we're going to do that for lacrosse goalie. Right off the bat, I would say that you win the category of size at 6'6" and the way that you move. So, but let's just jump in. I'm going to ask you a couple different categories. Why don't you name a goalie that you think is, either the best at that, or what or someone that you think is really strong in that category, and let's build the optimal goalie. So let's start with outlets and stick work. Who would you choose?
Outlets and stick work. I've always been a fan of John Galloway in that I used to string my sticks the same way. I try to pause a YouTube clip at the same time just so I could see the way he's strung and get my stick strung like that. I think just like a veteran guy like him, I took a couple notes and I put him under passing skills, and I also put him under vocal leader as like the vocal standpoint you'd want. I mean, you hear him in the PLO getting after guys. I mean, that just tenaciousness that he has in goal is unreal. And at the same time, like his stick skills are impeccable. From what I've heard, I heard he could go both hands, no problem. I've never seen it happen, but that's just kind of the rumors that's been around a guy like that. And like when you have rumors spreading that you can play goal with both hands, it's like, you got one of the best sticks in the game.
Yeah, no doubt.
I believe it.
I believe it too.
Let's move on to athleticism and out of the goal play. Who would you choose for that?
For athleticism and out of the goal play, I really like Kyle Bernlohr. I mean, he's one of those guys that like I can't compare my goalie style to because of our size difference. But when you watch him play, it's so calm, but yet so active and explosive, and just kind of that out of the play stuff. I actually was watching one of their tournament games was on ESPNU the other day, and I remember there was a ground ball behind, and he laid a guy out, then he got laid out, but they came up with the ground ball. And just kind of his quickness is just like something a big guy like me like inspires to be like. I aspire to have that quickness because it's so hard to move sometimes at my size. So just a guy like that, I just really feel is just someone to look up to with that elusiveness aspect.
For sure. Let's go on to ball stopping ability. Who would you think is one of the premier ball stoppers that you would put as your optimal goalie?
I actually had the pleasure of playing against him my sophomore year. I'd have to give it to Jack Kincannon. I mean, he's just a phenomenal goalie. It's cool to talk about people like John Galloway who have never had the opportunity to play against or with, but just being a college goalie at that time, only 2 years younger than him, and just watching the stuff that he was able to do on the field at the same time I was on the field was just remarkable to watch. I mean, he's so patient but reacts just so fast when that ball's released. It's impressive. And watching him on the field that day is just still stuck in my head. Just some of the stuff he could do is just unheard of. And it's just I like looking at his clips and stuff, and I like taking some of his game and trying to incorporate it to mine so much, because I feel like we do play a little bit of a similar game, very wide stance, very patient. But when that ball's released, I mean, we're flying to the ball. And I just, one part of his game that I wish I'm going to work on incorporating to mine is his elusiveness on rebounds and just how fast he can recover. And that's just something that's really impressive. He's not small. Like, he's a pretty big dude. And just that recovery quickness is just, it's not easy. And when you sell out and you drive to that ball, to pop up and move the other way or move opposite, whatever he's doing, he does it so fast. And just something like that, it's hard to teach. Like, that's just hard work.
Agreed, man. Jack is, quite an anomaly in the cage. His hand speed is wicked fast, but yeah, I think you make a strong point about being able to recover, especially at the rebounds, where in the league that you're headed to, guys will make you pay. They'll dump it right back in there. So awesome. Let's finish out with leadership. Who would you put as a good leader, or somebody that would kind of round out our optimal goal here?
Leadership, I think you got to go with Scott Rogers. I mean, it's just from what I see, and just the stuff he's dealt with and how he just pushes forward towards being a team guy like that. I mean, I've never had the pleasure to play with any of those PLO guys, so I really don't know any else. I'll be the first Delaware guy, but just like what you see from him on a sideline standpoint and what he's doing in like some of the clips pregame that you catch a glimpse of what he's saying and all that stuff. I mean, his like mental toughness is something different to deal with what happened, which he just recently posted in that national championship game. But and all the leadership things he does moving forward is just, I think he's got it figured out pretty well in the leadership game. So I definitely give that to him.
Awesome. Well, 4 guys that are certainly will go down in the Hall of Fame of goalies. But listen, man, really appreciate you being on the show here. Definitely an insightful interview. I took a lot out of it. I think it also reaffirmed a lot of the things that we teach and we preach to our goalies and coaches. So it's nice to hear that from somebody who's going to be headed to the next level. We'll be watching you. We can't wait to see where you end up.